Of Douglas Finance Committee coming to order on Tuesday, April 11, 2023 at 7:01 p.m. We're going to identify ourselves for the record. Heather, would you begin?
Heather Moore.
Sandy Kuiper.
Ryan Hogan.
Dick Vandenberg.
Howard D'Amico.
Carol Gogolinski.
First item on our agenda is capital improvement. Mike, you want to come to the table?
Sure.
So everybody, this is in your annual town warrant. Article 10, I think, right, Mike?
Yes. No, it's Article 10. Yep.
3 pages down.
So why don't you walk us through what capital improvement's been up to, Mike? And
Well, this is a list that we compiled last year in our 5-year plan, and it carried forward to this year. There's been one change on it, the number 2 on the list. It was the primary school tables that was on that list. They've acquired some tables that were donated to them to buy them some additional time on that. And they had an emergency repair that came up on the high school for the rooftop air conditioning units. So we kind of switched the spaces, increased the budget by $6,985. And then the 2 other increases from last year's projected list was the international number 4, which is the international dump truck for the highway department. It was listed last year at $215. The current price is $265. And the third thing was number 6, which is the sidewalk tractor and plow. That went from $170,000 to $180,000.
any questions for Mike? Anybody?
I have one. Mike, can you talk a little bit about number 3, the Douglas Middle School, I assume that is, oil tank? So that school was renovated less than 10 years ago?
Yeah, but that's an underground oil tank.
Okay.
And in light of the recent problem that we had in this particular building with an oil spill, the focus has been put on these oil tanks. So because of the age of the tank, is actually on this year we have the tank at the middle school, and you'll see on the, I don't know if I have that list with me, but on the projection for next year, I think the primary school also has a 10,000 gallon tank that's going to be changed as well.
Primary school is on the next one, yes.
Yeah, I'm just looking to see where it is.
It's on the bottom page. Is that the
Yep, it's on the bottom page. So on fiscal year 2025, we have the tank at the primary school. So both tanks are going to have to be removed and replaced.
Okay, so I understand the primary. The middle school, was the tank not replaced when we did the renovation 10 years ago?
I have no idea. I wasn't involved in the renovation. I'm going by the submissions from the school department that requested these 2 particular tanks to be replaced. So I trust that they need to be replaced. I don't see why they would be replacing them after 10 years.
I don't either. Courtney, would you mind?
Yeah, it's a 5,000 gallon tank that we currently have, and it was not replaced with the school project.
Okay, so it's
So we're looking
20.
for a 10,000 gallon tank to have it replaced because of the size of the building, but also because of the difficulty in just having the 5,000 gallons as well.
Okay. And so how old is, do you know approximately how old the tank is?
It was on all my paperwork. I don't recall. I don't.
Okay. So we're estimating 20 years, something like that? Would you say that was a good guess, or 15? Okay.
I got so many numbers rolling around in my head right now. It's
Fair
old.
enough.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is the primary school a 5,000 gallon tank as well?
No, it's 10,000.
That's 10,000, but that just needs to be replaced because due to the age.
Yes. It's very old.
Thank you.
Anybody else questions for Mike?
I do.
Oh, come on.
So I'm just, I don't understand the article itself, the option of a 5-year plan. Is this nonetheless a request for this transfer of funds for FY 2024 only?
These funds on Article 10 is only for 24. Yeah, that wouldn't cover the 5 years.
So that's the portion needed to address one fiscal year's worth of this.
Correct. If you recall, last year was $1,260,000, and then there was a $50,000 raise and appropriate for the building department's truck, so it was a total of $1,310,000 for last year's budget.
So I guess my question is the concept of it, even though these are listed as part of a 5-year plan, these are the items that with these funds would theoretically be completed within the next fiscal year?
These would be budgeted. Whether or not they would be completed over the next fiscal year, I couldn't answer that.
Thank you, Howard. Anybody else, questions for Mike? Okay, thank you, Michael.
I'm paroled.
You are.
Thank you.
Okay, our next article on the agenda is to go through the fiscal year 24 budget. So the way we're going to do this, so later in the night, we're going to actually vote on the articles for the warrant, but we're going to go over the budget now. So the way we'll do this is I'll read the category and the grand total, which is in bold on the papers that we have. And if someone has a question about it, just say hold. We'll hold and we'll come back to it later.
Mr. Chairman, point of order, I think we got to open the public hearing.
Well, it's just, it's a public meeting, so I don't think we have to technically open it like you would with planning board or zoning. I think it's just a public meeting.
Okay.
Am I right, Mr. Matt, is that right? I think so. I think I'm correct.
Mr. Hogan was chairman, did he treat it as a public hearing? Just going to drive me to the general bylaws, I'll be right back.
Yeah, I think we can proceed. It's just a meeting of the Finance Committee, which is open to the public. So we're going to carry on. All right, everybody understand the procedure? I'll say the budget item, the grand total, say hold if you have a question, all right? All right, here we go. Under general government, total selectmen, $352,179. Total finance director / accountant / audit, $201,735. Total assessors, $170,691. Total treasurer / collector, $28,029.
328,000.
What's that?
328,029.
328,029?
Yeah.
Is that, did I not say that? No. Okay. All right, total finance committee, $55,869. Total technology, $133,177. Total town clerk, $169,572. Total public building maintenance, $200,100. Okay, so no holds on the first page. Total permanent building committee, $1,450. Total community development, $324,843. Total other general government, $350. So the total for general government is $1,937,995. Okay, let's carry on. Total police, $2,080,501. Total fire, $687,131. Total ambulance, 579, 058. Total building department, 214,617. Total tree warden, 13,550. Total civil defense, 50,123. So no holds on that page.
Mr. Chair,
Yep.
there's two other ones, sealer weights and measures and animal control.
What was the first one?
Sealer of weights and measures for 750.
Oh, I see it, okay. Thanks, Gene, okay. Sealer of weights and measures, 750. Animal control, 42,900.
Hold.
Hold on animal control, Sandy?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, next page. Total public safety, $3,668,630. Cemetery, $9,860. Total highway, $1,110,947. Total other public works, $42,957. So then the overall total for public works is $1,163,764. Okay, so total Board of Health, $128,760. Total Council on Aging, $141,805. Total Veterans, $57,820. So the total for Health and Human Services is $328,385. And recreation expenses, $5,000. Any questions on that page? No holds, okay? Total library, $298,008. Memorial Day, $1,750. Total parks, $500. So total for culture and recreation, $305,258. So we now get to education. So total Douglas Public Schools, $16,742,457.
I'm hoping at some point to be able to speak to that bottom line.
Okay.
The appropriate time in the meeting.
Okay. Total Blackstone Valley Regional, $1,645,187. Medicaid, $5,000. Norfolk County Agricultural, $353,295. So total education, $18,745,939. Total insurance, employee benefits, and court judgment, $5,276,802. Total debt service, $2,051,173. And then you see the totals at the bottom of that page, which basically repeats what we said before. Okay, turn the page. So the total budget $33,477,946. All right, we had a couple of holds. Sandy, so what's your concern about?
I was wondering for the grade increase over last year. Last year was what, 19, and now we're at 42.9?
Jean, can you speak to that?
I'm going to let the chief.
Okay, Chief?
Quick answer is last year there was...
Nick, can you identify yourself for the record?
Nick Miglianico, Chief of Police. So it's a regional animal control, and last year we had a grant for over $100,000. So that was for the first year. So going into it, when all the towns came together, we knew that first year we're going to have a $100,000 grant. That's why the first year's share was so low, well, lower than it is now. And now we don't have that. It's not a repetitive grant. So it was an initial startup grant for us for over $100,000, and now we're on track for the regular payments.
So we can kind of expect that number going forward?
Yes.
Are there better services as a result as well?
Much better. 24/7, full-time animal control. They have a direct number now, so they don't have to call the police station direct. The calls are going right to them, so it's been a lot better.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions on that for the chief? All right. Okay. Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
And then, Paul, you want to speak to that amount?
Thank you.
And if you guys should just identify yourselves for the record, okay?
Absolutely. Paul Vieira, Superintendent of Schools.
Courtney Keegan, Business and Operations Manager for the school department.
I'd like to thank the Finance Committee for allowing us this opportunity to speak about the school's budget. My purpose here tonight is not to point fingers, but just to inform the Finance Committee as to what happened and hopefully come to some form of resolution to be able to make sure that our students and staff have their needs met. During the 21-22 school year, the school department, school committee, the town, and the Douglas Teachers Association worked collaboratively on a new teacher's contract. One of the many things this new contract set out to do was to smooth the salary grid so that salary fluctuations were more stable and predictable from year to year. The new salary grid that was adopted has step increases starting at 3% and gradually increasing to 6%, with never more than 1% increase from one year to the other. The previous grid that we had a range of starting less than 2% and increasing up to and over 12% in any one particular year. So if you had a year where you had staff going from a 2% to a 12%, those large increases could be a budget buster. The other thing that the new salary grid does was that it increased bachelor's step 1, which is a starting teacher salary, from $47,942 to $51,730. And it also added an additional step from step 11 to step 12 for existing members on step 11. This was done to obtain and retain quality teachers that our students deserve. Over the years, and all things being equal, this new salary grid will allow for stability to our budget and potentially the ability to fund and support new programs and positions for our existing staff. But please bear in mind that 85% of our budget is made up of staff, and staffing from one year to the next is extremely fluid and unpredictable. I want to go on record by saying I'm very grateful to everyone that worked on this proposal. It was a year and a half of work, a great collaboration between the school committee, school department, the town, and the Teachers Association. It was needed for our staff, it was needed for the schools, and it was needed for the town. In order to fund this grid, year one, the town added $327,347 to our FY23 base, with an additional 2% increase to our appropriation. In FY24, an increase was added to our base of $165,067, with a 2% increase to our previous year's appropriation. I want to speak to the 2% appropriation just so people understand that the 2% appropriation we get above our previous year doesn't even fund our contractual obligations. We started a deficit every year. The 2% does not account for inflation, special education expenditures, or anything to move the district forward for staff or for programming. We calculated our FY24 appropriation the same way the town and the schools have done so for decades. We took our FY23 general fund appropriation, added 2% to it, and added the 165,067 to fund the salary grid. This was built predicated on the fact that the 327,347 was still in our base. It stands to reason that if the 327,347 was needed to fund salaries in FY23, it is also needed in FY24. Salaries go up every year, not down. Hypothetically speaking, if everyone took a freeze in steps and lanes in FY24, the 327,347 would still need to be there to fund the salaries. Over time, the smoother increases in steps should help to stabilize the budget. However, this may not happen for years, and the budget does not decrease, it increases. Our budget, which is not a real needs budget, is modest and conservative, and does not include the additional staffing and resources that we need for our students and staff. If the school department does need to eliminate the 327,347, that could result in a minimum of 7 instructional positions for next year. Those number of positions could also increase in FY25 if the gap grows and funding does not. These elimination of staff members would result in increase of class size and elimination of programming for our students. These cuts would have a long-term financial impact not only for the town, for the schools, including an increase in school choice out, more students potentially going to BVT and Norfolk Aggie, additional special education referrals, and potential elimination of programs. That's what happens when cuts are made. This puts our students at a disadvantage, places an increased burden on our staff, and makes it difficult for our students when they compete with other students in local school districts for opportunities beyond high school. I'm respectfully asking for the Finance Committee to approve the total school appropriation that the school committee also approved of $15,065,318 for the FY24 school year. More than happy to answer any questions if the committee has them.
Comments or questions, anybody for Paul or Courtney?
So, excuse me.
Yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
So the difference between what is on our budget sheet and what you're projecting, that's the 328K plus the 2%? Is that what you're?
It's the 328,000 plus the 2% that was added to the 327, which is roughly $333,000, correct?
And are there any further, I don't know if agreement is the right word, for the town for fiscal year 25? Is there additional funding you're expecting, just so we can get it all out on the table now?
The additional funding, my understanding is that it's just an additional 2% increase.
So going forward, you would just be expecting the 2% increase?
Well,
that's...
because, I mean, if you don't mind my saying, I mean, just a 2% increase, I mean, put the DTA contract aside, because that's not, you know, there's a lot of things that go into educating the students. It doesn't mean that that's, you know, to fulfill the needs of the
I understand, Courtney.
Okay.
I misspoke.
Just want to make sure.
There's no additional
Subsidies, is that what you're trying to say? Like,
cash amount. Next year, you're not expecting 95,000 plus the 2%
No.
increase. I'm just trying to, I was not here a year ago,
it's
so
just
I'm not familiar with the agreement. I just want to make sure. So it was in your assessment, there was a 2-year step up with the extra?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So Paul, I'm looking at the budget. So the number that you feel is on the low side, is it the 16,742? Or total Douglas Public Schools, or not?
So actually, the two numbers that, you know, the way that they have it here, you would be looking at the $14,566,357 and the $165,067. Those are, we don't separate it out like that, you know, we just have an appropriation that, the transportation is a separate.
So we're looking at the $15,065,318 plus the
transportation.
The transportation, which is $2,011,033.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's even,
So
double check that.
the total that's in front of me now, the 16,742,
Is short about 330,
is about 350,000 short.
333.
Okay. Comments or questions, anybody? So Paul, I just wondering, kind of thinking out loud, and Courtney, if you can weigh in, I wonder, the budget that's presented here now is a balanced budget. If the Finance Committee were to recommend a balanced budget, and the town meeting would go for that, is there anything that can be done between now and the November special town meeting to address financial concerns?
Okay, just to make sure that we're on the same page, when you say a balanced budget, do you mean the budget that we had approved by the school committee on April?
No, I
5th?
mean-
Or do you mean
These
the
two
town's, okay,
these
just want to
two
make sure that we're on the
numbers
same
match.
page.
Yeah.
Well,
Go ahead.
so we need to provide notice. If we have to eliminate 7 positions from the budget, we need to provide that notice to them on June 1st.
Okay.
So, and furthermore, I think maybe even more importantly is that when you start off a school year, you want to start off the school year with the staff for the students from the first day. It's really difficult when people come and go as it is during the school year, but in order to wait until November and get the appropriation, the funding for it, we could not post until that time, and then you still don't know how soon you can get someone, because that's a terrible, terrible time to be looking for staff. So even we have had difficulty this year when we have had people leave during the year, retire during the year, trying to find anyone. We've gone for quite some time trying to find someone. So we have 2 kind of precarious situations here. Well, that's a precarious situation, but also you want to have that staff in front of the students from day one as well.
So I'm just sort of thinking out loud here, but, townwide, the departments were told to have about a 1% increase for the next fiscal year. And the budget that we have in front of us, generally speaking, represents that. And I'm just wondering if the town meeting went for this budget, which is 330 less than what you'd prefer, is there any mechanism in place or anything that can happen between now and November to address some of your concerns? Is that a possibility?
Well, when we first presented our budget, when we, the first go around with the school committee, we had, I believe it was $754,000 we still had to reduce.
Right.
It took until just before the public hearing last week to actually come up with that additional amount. We really struggled to come up with that amount, to the point where at the end we had to eliminate, first we eliminated 3 of the 4 positions, because one of them we really needed to keep. And we ended up having to eliminate that new position, was a special ed teacher position. Not that all of them weren't needed, but we just, that was kind of our last holdout. The only other thing we could go to was, which we do not want to do, because we've been there and done that, is the elimination. The only large funding program, largely funded program, is the high school athletics. Now, we all know what that will do, so we didn't want to go near that with a 10-foot pole. So what we ended up doing is going through every single line, and even though we know it's not a good thing to do, but reducing.
Right.
Taking out of just everywhere. And also just want to let you know that, in fact, I brought copies for all of you. As far as our 2 main additional funding sources, which is school choice and circuit breaker. If you want to pass these around.
Hey, Courtney, define circuit breaker for the,
Okay, certainly.
lay person.
Yeah, certainly. So there are, circuit breaker is whatever you spend on eligible expenditures, say in FY23, so we're talking about the 24 budget. There's a state law that provides that you can receive up to 75% reimbursement on those after foundation amount is removed, which is roughly around $44,000 for each one of them. So for example, if you have a special ed tuition of $100,000, and that definitely is eligible, that tuition, they would remove, let's keep it simple, $40,000, they call it foundation amount. So now you only have $60,000 that's eligible for the 75% reimbursement, and that's only if it's appropriated by the state, which for a number of years they did not fulfill their promise of the 75%, but I have to say, knock on wood, the last few years they have done the 75%. And that being said, so then you do not receive this revenue, the circuit breaker revenue, until the subsequent year. Okay? And there are certain circumstances where if you go beyond 115% of the prior year's expenditures, you can also apply for what's called extraordinary relief. We have not been able to do that for a few years. We haven't been eligible, but in the past, there were a few years where we did receive some extraordinary relief as well. But that's how that works. So if you look at my sheet, let me go over this with you a little bit if you don't mind. So the school choice is the first one. So I actually stole this, from someone else. So
Borrowed.
Yeah, borrowed. Yeah, stole. But anyway, so I'd like to keep a trend history. I think it's important to see how much, things have changed over the years. More so, the amount that we've had to use because of the 2% or 1.5% of additional appropriation year over year over year over year. We're just losing ground more and more and more each year. So you will see that we have had to greatly increase our use of school choice in some years to offset that. Now, as you know, the override went in effect in FY19, so you can see a little bit of mitigation there to some extent. And there are some ups and downs here. It depends on, how the general fund kind of works out for the year as well. But particularly in FY22, 23, and 24, you see things are getting more and more and more precarious from a financial standpoint for the school department. We're having to utilize school choice budgeted in the budget just to keep up with expenditures, and usually not being able to add, but maybe a few over the years, a few new positions, but not much for new programs or anything without the use of grants that we apply for, which we have received and we're grateful for. So as you can see going forward, if you look at the projected fund balance, ending fund balance from 23 to 24, I can see that further decreasing as well. We're kind of, how we kind of were on a kind of a nice upswing since 2018, and then we got the override. We wanted to have stability in FY18 because we were just in such a precarious spot, which was affecting the town as well. A lot of people leaving, a lot of people not wanting to come to Douglas. We turned that around. We turned that around by not having any layoffs since 2018. That was a humongous factor for staff morale, for staff to feel that staying here is a good thing to do. So we have that continuity for our students, having teachers with the Douglas experience, the students in front of them year after year, which I think is of great value to the students and to the town as well for the stability factor. And now I see that we're kind of going the other way. And if you recall, when we came to the public hearing, I did say, and I had to kind of apologize, and I said we fully appreciate the override. And it did help us out. It did bring some stability, but it really wasn't enough. So I kind of knew that 4 or 5 years down the road, we were going to be going in the other direction again. And this is what I'm seeing now. 2% just doesn't sustain, particularly the mandates. That unfortunately, whether we like them or not, we're required to deal with everything we're required by law to deal with in the school department. We can't say, hey, we don't have the money, we're not doing it. You have to do it. So those are the two funding sources that we have. And if you look at circuit breaker, it's the same thing there as well. The reason that I show in black and white, so to speak, the contingency line, is just for conversation purposes with the school committee budget subcommittee, with the budget subcommittee, with the full school committee, between myself and Paul for planning purposes, or the finance committee, is that we always want to keep in our mind, we want to have a contingency there in case something does happen. So that's why we have that line there. But you can see those balances are greatly decreasing. So I'm getting more and more concerned about going into FY25. But certainly the last thing we wanted to do, we did not want to go into a situation under, I'd like to say under any circumstances, but here we are, in having to be sending out notices, laying off staff that we absolutely need to have. There's not one staff member we have at Douglas Public Schools that isn't greatly needed for our students, and that's what we're there for. That's what we're there for. And keep in mind that this also mitigates, you brought up, the town budget side of things. What we do on the school side helps the town side as well to mitigate increases. And Norfolk Aggie is kind of a very specialty school, so not as much, although it's very high tuition, but not as much so. But BVT and school choice out. The minute you start going in that other direction again, it's like a rolling ball. It might start off and then it starts going down that cliff and it goes fast and things happen very quickly. And it might happen in 1 year, but to have it rebound back, as we have seen from past experience, takes a long time getting it back. It really does. And I know that I'm not telling anybody anything that you guys don't know, because we've all been through it. We've all been here a number of years.
And I
So
think-
we've seen it, we've experienced it.
I think to answer your question about waiting till November, if we wait till after town meeting in November, 85% of our budget is staffing.
Right.
At that point, a third of the year is gone. So to hire staff a third of the year in, what do you do with the students for the first third of the school year? The rest of the budget, supplies, materials, resources, we need what we need to start the school year off. There's very little we could put off until purchasing in January, February, March, April of the next school year, with no guarantee that that funding would come at special town meeting. So with the biggest piece of the budget being staffing, and knowing that a third of the school year, we couldn't have kids just sitting without teachers, or having class sizes, for instance, of 25, 30, whatever the number may be, and then a third of the way through the school year, hiring staff, and then breaking routines, breaking norms, reestablishing them, and knowing that your quality people are applying for jobs in February, March, April, not in October, November, December.
Are there any funding sources in the next few months yet that we don't know what the amount will be in terms of aid or other things, or not?
Yeah, I mean, there are some things, and this question came up during the public hearing as well. We have absolutely nothing definitive on those things. There is a thing to address the OSD.
14%.
14% rate went over a period of 13 years. It was around 2%. They're looking at various mechanisms, but nothing is definitive. And as we all know, we can't rely on things that we do not have any specific knowledge of. We can't even quantify it. And I actually sent an email to Jay Sullivan from DESE, and I knew the answer I was going to get back, but
The OSD 14%, they're
they
looking
can't
at...
tell us anything.
They're looking at different ways to fund it. They're looking at different formulas. They're looking at some schools getting different amounts than other schools. They haven't even come up with a benchmark as to how they decide who gets what,
Right.
or what the total amount is.
Right.
So to base things on hoping you might get a dollar amount is scary.
Yeah.
When will that decision be made?
They haven't told us.
They haven't told us that either, yeah. And even when I emailed Jay Sullivan from DESE, there was nothing that he could offer for information. It's the legislators, just kind of working through it, we'll say.
Can you just explain, Courtney, the $780,000 and the carryover reclasses from general fund from
Oh,
last
okay,
year?
so that's, so I'm going to, this is just my projection. I spent many, 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 many hours, because I had to come up with that huge dollar amount, okay? So I did projections on both school choice and general fund. So that would basically be, it's just my way of writing it. Sometimes it doesn't make sense to people. So basically reclasses. So it would come off of that 1.4, because we bring our general fund down to 0.
So is that money you're estimating would not be spent in the '23 budget? Is that what you're saying?
Between
I'm sorry.
school choice and general fund, our projection.
Okay.
Yep. And that's higher than we normally have. But we've had some positions where, again, we've had people coming in and out, and we've had some time period where we, but that's all been taken into consideration. And even with that taken into consideration, we are still in the situation that we're in now, dollar-wise, to come up with what we need for the FY24 budget.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions?
Remember, that's a combination, too, between school choice and general fund.
Yes.
Yeah.
Howard first, go ahead.
So sit back, relax. Okay. All right, so let's figure out why on April 11th we're hearing about this in this format and at this time. Can you walk me through how you got to learn that you would be reporting this evening that with the budget currently adopted or proposed by the town administrator and by Board of Selectmen, you would be looking to cut 7 staff members? Can you walk me through the last, let's call it 60 days of your awareness of that pending possibility, and when you first reported it to finance, and when you became aware of it?
Certainly. So historically in Douglas, we've received our town appropriations sometime in January or February. This year, February came and we had not received a total town appropriation. Ms. Keegan emailed the town, I believe it was twice, with our total appropriation stating, is this our accurate appropriation? We did not hear back. On March 20th, we had a meeting, Ms. Keegan, myself, and the town administrator, where we said, is the math that we sent you in our total appropriation accurate? And we were told yes to that. On March 21st,
Can you bear with me?
yes, sir.
So that I understand the piece. When you say your total appropriation, what number are we talking about? Actual number?
The $15,065,318.
Okay, can you get me back to that exact number on the paperwork I have in front of us?
It is not in the paperwork you have in front of you.
Okay, so let's cover that. I've got two numbers in front of me, 14,566,357, and what looks to be 165,067, correct?
Correct.
And is the 165,067 what you were running as a rough number of 165 in your initial presentation this evening?
Correct. That is our FY24 appropriation.
All right. So from those two numbers,
Only with the...
are you
with those two
suggesting
numbers.
that the 327, 347, in addition to those two numbers, gets you to the 1,000,005 and change that you're calling what you had anticipated up through about March 20 was going to be your actual appropriation?
So just to make sure I understand quickly, so you're saying that if we take the...
Quick, we're not going to be quick. We're
Okay.
going to talk about 7 teachers, and we're talking about the operation of the school. We've got the town here tonight, so you don't have to be quick.
So if you take the 14,566,357, add the 165,067, and then add to that, I believe it's the 333,
Yeah, I think,
333 and change.
I think it's a little bit different because the way the
Yeah,
calculation.
you come to the 15,065,318.
So the way, so Howard, so the precise calculation, which I sent in the email on February 15th, was, and this is what we typically, so we took the FY23 appropriation of $14,608,089.
Bear with me.
So it's $14,608,089.
Yep.
And you can look at, you can tie that right back. Then the 2%, year over year, comes to
Yep.
292,162.
Yep.
And then we added on the FY24, we call it DTA subsidy, of 165,067.
Okay.
And that comes to the 15,065,318 that we were working with all along.
Okay.
Yeah. But the way that the,
Bear with me.
oh, I'm sorry.
Let me digest that.
Sure. Mhm.
And I'm just trying to follow along. Are you suggesting that effectively, while you got the 165, you didn't get 2%?
No, so what happened was, the prior year's appropriation was taken, the $14,608,089, and then the subsidy was removed. The subsidy was provided to us this year of $327,347, which came...
This year being
FY23. Right. But for 24 budget, though. Yeah.
Or the 20.
In other words, we're talking about the FY24 calculation you have before you this evening.
The 323.
327, 347 was removed.
This one,
And that was the subsidy amount that we were provided with this year. It was taken out. Yeah.
And when did you learn that?
We learned of that 2 days before our public hearing, which I believe was on April 3rd.
And
Yeah.
how did you learn that?
We learned about it by happenstance when Ms. Keegan had a conversation
Yeah,
with...
we were just talking about Norfolk Aggie, and then she just happened to mention she had just been provided with that number, so I just double-checked it real quick, and then things just went, yeah, just from there. I was kind of in shock, so, yeah.
And is it, and again, I'm trying to understand, is that a
Yeah.
subsidy effectively that you had a similar type of subsidy the previous year?
No, they just started in this year.
It just started,
FY23.
FY23 was the first year to
Yeah.
fund the grid.
Yeah.
To fund the grid?
Correct.
Okay.
So if we needed, so,
That's where that number
yeah.
effectively came from, to fund
Yeah.
the compensation
Correct.
table that everybody's been working on.
Correct.
And then in the last 2 weeks, you learned that you would not receive
Just
that
last week.
subsidy to help fund the grading.
Correct.
Yeah, last Monday, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And, our contention is, just to try to make it really just kind of simplify it, is that if we needed the funds to fund all the staff with that new salary grid in FY '23, we would need it in FY '24, plus an additional appropriate. Not only, because it's not just a DTA contract, it's part of our budget. That's one part of our budget, but there's many other staffing units. There's contractual obligations, there's special ed, there's textbooks, there's electricity and heat, et cetera.
Matthew, can you speak to this too a little bit in terms of timing and when that developed or evolved?
Why don't you finish with your questions?
I want to get a second part and come back, if I may, please.
You have a question you want to ask, or do you want to?
Sure, I'm trying to understand, because as you know, we meet every couple of weeks. We see parts of this, and each time, in my experience, 7 or 8 years, the budget evolves through March. And I know that we've had the discussion year over year of whose budget is it the Board of Selectmen's budget, is it the Finance Committee's budget? And tonight it's the Finance Committee's budget. And we're being presented with the Board of Selectmen's budget and being asked by the schools to adopt the Finance Committee budget. It's different, and that's the debate we've had year over year. So before I later entertain that or would talk about recommending entertaining that or not, I'd like to understand a little bit of how within that time we see the town administrator who really comes before us. We don't really crisscross in the last 3 or 4 years with the Board of Selectmen. And so I'm just trying to understand when it evolved that if I'm using 323 as a number, really had to start to write a balanced budget. And that's really not a correct phrase. It's not balanced because we take money to make the numbers work. But when we first practically recognized that we were going to have to not be able to give that part to the students?
A long, long time ago, because they were never intended to get it.
Okay, and I'm trying to understand.
So the DTA contract was settled with 2 financial components on the financial side of the house. One was we were going to increase the school's annual, increasing the rate of increase from our typical paltry, and we all know this, 1.5% to 2%. And in order to help them pay their bills, because the biggest part of the contract settlement was year 1, we transferred free cash, a non-recurring revenue source, for the benefit of the schools to be able to settle this contract. A first in history offer by the town to support the school administration in this effort. So, in year 1, the new teacher contract costed out at $467,355. The town transferred free cash, $327,347, in addition to a 2% increase of $280,015. So, by my math, almost $607,000 of new funds to help them settle a contract that cost $467,000. The entire concept here is the teacher contract, not the full operation of the Douglas Public Schools, only the contract. But only the base would increase by 2%. You weren't going to add free cash to the base. And we had this conversation, I believe, Mr. Chairman, that one of your members and I had this conversation many times to clarify that the free cash would not go to the base. We don't have the money as a town to promise $327,000 in recurring revenue the following year, because that represents more than 80% of the levy. So that it's nonsensical to me. I'll sit on this island, but I'm happy on it because I think it's a good spot. The following year, we were going to reduce the subsidy to the school department for the teacher contract by 50% and arrive at 165,067, but also give them another 2%. So their base is growing to absorb the cost of the contract, and the subsidy feathers out so that by year 3, they get nothing from it.
And when was that part understood by everybody?
I thought it was understood by everybody for a very long time. Yes, and we exchanged in January 20th of '22, an actual spreadsheet model that detailed this arrangement. And I got one version from the school business manager, I corrected it and sent it back. All through this process, every single person involved has made assumptions that have not panned out. That's why we're sitting here tonight. I'll own mine without excuses or pointing fingers. I assumed that they were on the same page as me with this course of action. Because frankly, no one can come up with this much money at the end of the budget process to cover a hole. I do believe, and I completely disagree with my colleagues, we can get to November and some combination of what they have left in their reserves and what we have in new growth, we can achieve a number of things. And it may not be comfortable or routine for a typical school administration operation, but it may be what we need to do. I look at budgeting very differently than a lot of other people. I tend to be just about resources. When I went through the school's budget, I didn't see the salaries driving the cost increases here. I saw, hold on, let me finish. This is very important. I saw proposals to move the school department forward that no one has had a chance to hear. We are sitting here tonight, and I don't go to their public hearings. We have enough budget activity on our side. But what I see here as I went through a lot of it, therapists, sped contractual, paraprofessionals, another sped contractual. These are the things that are adding costs. Psychologists, adjustment counselors. These are worthy conversations. I think everybody on the town side is willing to have and to fund. But we need to identify, because new growth is recurring revenue, that will actually lock these things in and fund them, as opposed to a subsidy which was designed purely to offset the pain of the contract. And we weren't going to offset all of it. It was 50-50.
Thank you. You've answered my question.
Sometimes I have things I want to get out there, Mr. Chairman, and Howard's impatient with me.
Anything else, Howard?
No, I think I'm all set. Right? Unless you guys want to address that, but I just assume I'm good. You guys are good.
I'm more than happy to answer any other questions that you have, Mr.
I'm good for
D'Amico.
now.
Okay.
Thank you both. Thank you.
Other
Anyone else?
Anybody else FinCom questions for Paul or Courtney or Matt?
I just want to, piggyback on one thing Mr. Wojcik said.
Okay.
How we got here. How people may have misunderstood things or not misunderstood things may have happened, may not have happened. Clearly, there is a misunderstanding. At the end of the day, a potential misunderstanding between adults shouldn't impact kids. And I'm hoping that we can come to some form of resolution for FY24 in the next 2-3 weeks before we go to town meeting on May 1. And we can take care of FY25 come September, October, November. But if there was a misunderstanding between adults, shouldn't impact kids.
We're all working for the town. We're all working for the same cause. Yeah.
Okay.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So no other questions, anybody, for Paul or Courtney? Okay. You want to say
No, I
something?
just want to make sure there weren't any more questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
All right, so those are the two holds that we had. Any comments or questions, FinCom people, on just the budget as we've had our discussion? Okay, we will carry on with our agenda then, so. All right, Matt, can you come up and just give us a update on comp reform, if we have any loose ends we need to be concerned about?
We don't. You will notice some complexity in the presentation. We are in the midst of some changes in terms of how we staff. So we've got a couple of categories that we're just going to straight line. It's not going to be on the table. It's just, this is what we're going to pay this class of employees this year and assign a value to that. In closing the comp reform proposal, I want everyone to realize that we really took the paring knife to this budget, and there is nothing, right? So the only thing that I felt confident we should reduce would be those accounts that can later be funded with free cash at the special to make up for the operational cuts. So I put a zero, I think I put a $1 increase in snow and ice, and the tree warden's budget is kept to a very bare minimum. All of my department heads came back either with a 1% or some of them are closer to 1.5% increase in their expense accounts. And those that did not, we identified revenue sources to offset their added increases, specifically the ambulance department. So that is how we ended up. Now, on the very last day before the budget was published to the select board, our property and casualty insurer came in and said, yeah, you know, your budget's got a 6% increase in it. It's really more like 10.8. Sorry about that. So we scrambled and found another 60 grand to cover that. I only want to flag one other item for you, is that please do know that you cannot add people anywhere in Douglas town government without the town's budget reflecting the necessity to offer those people health insurance, and it has to be budgeted for. So if you add 6 or 7 people, we budget those at family plans of close to $25,000 each. So in resolving one hole on one side, you may be handing the town a very large deficit on its side that we don't have the flexibility to be able to fix. So that's why these conversations need to occur earlier, because we could accommodate some of these, work on some of these things, but not as we get so deep into it. Comp reform, I will only say one more thing, Mr. Chairman, because I think it's important that Douglas residents realize this. We are struggling to get many of our people up to competitive salaries for the jobs they work. Probably the largest and most egregious example of where we're short, you know, you can be, and I'm hoping that spitballs hit the back of my head from the police chief if I get this wrong, but I'm going to round up. We pay dispatchers about, when they start, about $20 an hour, and they can work anywhere else around us for 25. I just participated in a salary survey today for Department of Public Works and Highway Superintendent, and I thought we were doing a great job here with comp reform and getting our folks up to competitive levels. And yet, in the course of this salary survey, the highway superintendent in Shrewsbury is going to make more money than the town administrator in Douglas, and a lot more, way more than the highway superintendent in Douglas. So I know Shrewsbury is a bigger town, but I think what this starts to, the longer we wait to address this issue, the harder it is going to be financially to cope with trying to get there. And what we've done is we've feathered this in. Everything I try to recommend, Mr. Chairman, to town meeting and select board and to you, is the gradualism. We did longevity bonuses one year, we did a 4% COLA the second year, and then we did full-on comp reform the third year. It was part of one process to get all of these salaries up to competitive levels. So that's how the budget came out in the final analysis. I think all the other highlights, I think we've discussed at nauseum probably at previous meetings.
Any questions, anybody for Matt on compensation reform? We have talked about it a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's carry on with our agenda then. Review and vote recommendations for the special town meeting warrant articles, and Heather has agreed to be our mover. So if everybody would have their special town meeting warrant in front of them. And I had also sent everyone a sentence or two that gives a context for each of these articles, just to set the stage for the townspeople. So we'll address those two as we have opportunity. So Heather, you ready to go?
Sure am.
So this is the special town meeting, right?
Yep.
Okay.
So Article 1, I move the town vote to amend the action taken on Article 2 of the annual town meeting of Monday, May 2nd, 2022 by transferring the available funds in the following sums of money to the following budget line items in the fiscal year 2023 budget. Do I need to list out?
I just want to make one point. You're recommending that the town vote to move.
I recommend.
Howard, do we need to list every one of these? Is that?
No.
I don't think so. So I think the motion would just say as listed.
As listed. The motion as listed.
The motion to recommend.
The motion to recommend as listed Article 1 for fiscal year 2023, budget transfers and amendments.
Is there a second, anybody? Mike seconds. So what I wrote, everybody, for the background is simply, this is standard procedure to take care of changes in spending and costs that have occurred since the annual town meeting of May 2, 2022. That sound good?
Sounds
Okay,
good.
all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? So that's a unanimous recommendation from the Finance Committee. Heather?
Next one is Article 2, snow and ice hot count transfer. The Finance Committee recommends the town to vote to transfer from free cash the sum of $75,000 to the FY23 snow and ice account.
Second by Mike. And my boilerplate is standard procedure to take care of spending, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Unanimous vote to recommend. Okay, Heather?
Next one is Article 3, prior year bills. Finance Committee recommends the town to vote to transfer from free cash the sum of $1,753.91 to pay for as listed in the warrant.
Second by Mike. Thank you, Mike. Standard procedure again, everybody. Questions? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Unanimous vote to recommend Article 3. Heather?
Next one is the Article 4, which is the police cruisers. The Finance Committee recommends the town to vote to transfer the sum of $115,000 from free cash to fund the purchase of 2 police cruisers and all the associated costs.
Second by Mike.
That was a motion?
Recommend, sorry.
Motion to recommend.
Motion to recommend.
And the background to that, everybody, as you recall, is there are 2 police cruisers that are currently available. They kind of have our names on them, so this will enable us to buy these this current fiscal year yet. Okay, questions or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Unanimous vote to recommend for Article 4. Okay, Heather?
Article 5 is the fire command and vehicles. The Finance Committee recommends the town to vote to transfer the sum of $60,000 from finance ambulance receipts reserved from appropriated accounts to fund the purchase of a fire command vehicle and all associated costs.
Second. You move to recommend?
Move to recommend.
Okay, Mike seconds.
I have a question on that. What is this fire command vehicle?
That's the chief's.
Well, the idea is there'll be another vehicle for either the chief or the assistant chief. Kelly, are you here? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure.
And just identify yourself for the record, okay?
My name is Kelly Manning, and I'm the Assistant Fire Chief. The purpose of this is to replace the Fire Chief's command vehicle, which is almost 10 years old and nearing the end of its life. as a result of replacing it, his cruiser will be handed down to me for use. But like I said, that vehicle's at the end of its life, and we don't have any backup. And it directly supports the ambulance department because it carries medical equipment and it responds with the ambulance if needed.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. Does that answer your question, Carol?
Kelly, could you stay for a minute?
Yeah,
I have
yeah,
a further
go ahead.
question. I'm not sure if this is for you. I know at one point there were 2 vehicles being discussed with ARPA funds. Did we decide those vehicles weren't eligible? Is that what we decided, or? I know I heard a Board of Selectmen meeting that discussed it. Come on up, Matt. Sure. I'm sorry, man.
Yeah, go ahead.
This problem of having too many former chairmen up there is that they all, it was not supported for ARPA, it wasn't prioritized.
Okay. And so we're just going with a 1 vehicle for now, is that correct?
With a different funding source.
Yes, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Cal?
What is the typical life on a vehicle, like generally, what is 10 years, or is it 20, or is it generally more?
It certainly depends on how much the vehicle is used, but I'd say the average would be about 7 years.
Okay, and then would we be thinking that in the fire department that we would always have 2 vehicles on hand? Or as if this one is defunct, would we just go back to 1?
No, the hope would be that we would have 2 vehicles because we have a second administrative position, which is myself, and it's really needed.
Expound.
Sure. So right now, our department has myself and the fire chief, we're both paramedics, 2 separate people. So essentially, if he's away or we're not often together, so he might be doing inspections and I might be somewhere else in a meeting, and if we need to go out and support the folks on the ambulance, because right now we only have 1 paramedic on duty, so we would respond to back up the ambulance, or as when I presented to the Board of Selectmen, as well as for the Capital Committee, oftentimes our ambulance is delayed coming back from the hospital, and we respond ahead of the ambulance to provide medical care prior to the ambulance arriving, and then even if we are doing simultaneous calls, we can respond ahead of a mutual aid ambulance or even our second ambulance being brought out with call firefighters.
How often does this happen?
I would say it happens on a regular basis. For example, this week it's happened about 5 times approximately, so it happens on a regular basis.
And then what do you do about this vehicle that we're purchasing?
I'm currently doing it in a personal vehicle.
What kind of medical things do you carry in this vehicle?
So in the vehicle, we carry oxygen, we carry defibrillator, we also carry multiple emergency medications such as Narcan, glucose, EpiPens, medications that could truly save a patient's life if an ambulance is delayed and they're waiting medical care. So that's why this vehicle is so important.
And did you say that you're an EMT as well as the chief?
Yes, both of us are paramedics.
Paramedics.
In our department right now, we only have 4 full-time paramedics, so we're a little bit short on our staffing, so having these vehicles available to get out to provide medical care to the community is even more so important than when we presented this vehicle, say, in the past, in the fall, for ARPA consideration.
I have one more question. What's the difference between a paramedic and an EMT?
So it's essentially a higher level of care. So an EMT can do basic things like treat a patient with splinting, basic first aid, bleeding control. A paramedic can provide life-saving interventions such as medications, advanced cardiac support, use a heart monitor, those sort of things, provide advanced trauma care, advanced airway support.
Okay, thank you. I didn't know what the difference was.
I'm sorry.
Appreciate that.
I'm sorry, one more question. So if the chief is out in his vehicle, what kind of things is he out doing?
So he may be out doing inspections, or he may be in a meeting, or he might have the day off or be on vacation, and I may be out doing something similar. Right now, as you know, our community is growing, so we're doing a whole lot more commercial inspections. So we may be in 2 places where, if we're in 2 places, we may need to respond back to the fire station even just to get the ambulance to go out together, or he may be closer to where something occurs. We're not usually necessarily riding around together, so sometimes that makes it challenging to get cars back or get ourselves back to where we need to get an ambulance or a fire truck or that type of thing.
And he's using an emergency vehicle, which is equipped with things to go do an inspection?
Yeah, so his car has all the emergency medical care items that I discussed before, as well as other items to check for hazardous conditions like gas meters. And he has a fire extinguisher in his vehicle, and my personal vehicle is equipped with the same exact items that the fire chief has in his vehicle. So they're basically mirror images of each other. So, yep.
I'm good, thank you.
Anybody else, questions? Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, Paul.
As a point of order, as part of the public hearing, is there a public speak portion of the hearing?
Pardon me?
Is there a public speak portion for the community to participate?
Well, I think anytime somebody wants to ask a question, they may raise their hand and
Thank you.
and be acknowledged. Sure, you bet.
Thank you.
All right, any more questions on the motion to recommend for Article 5? Mike, you seconded it, I think, right? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
One opposed, any abstain? So the vote to recommend is
6-1.
6-1, okay. All right, now we will carry on with our regular town meeting warrant, the annual town meeting warrant. So Heather will also read the motions and again, citizens, if you ever have a comment or a question about any of the warrant articles, raise your hand. Be acknowledged by the chair. If you have a comment or question, address the Finance Committee, okay? So we don't have side conversations and on any item. Okay. Does anybody have a question now, for instance? So say your name and ask your question.
Monique Salvis. I am curious, when we were going through this line-by-line budget item, under Board of Health wages, from FY 2023 to FY 2024, there was an increase from $58,541 to $73,702, and I was just wondering, the reason for that increase, because I'm looking at 2022 to 2023, and an increase is only seen about 8,000, whereas we're seeing something much more significant here.
Jean, can you answer that for us? Or Matt? Okay.
So I'm digitally dialing back to that slide in the PowerPoint presentation where we mentioned, and not everybody's seen it. So when we went through our employees, we identified a couple of roles in Town Hall that were bona fide management people. They were responsible for managing people, significant budgets, and any number of significant assets and potential legal liabilities of the town, and they were being paid as hourly employees. And one of those people was the office assistant in the Board of Health, who up to this point would split her time, the cost of her time. So some of her time was funded through the transfer station, and some of her time was funded through the general fund budget. When we decided that we wanted to make that position a management position and reflect the responsibilities of it, we increased the salary, but we took the entire salary and put it into the general fund budget. And then we took the office assistant in that function in the Board of Health, who's a part-time person, and moved her hourly rate over to the transfer station. So the transfer station continues to support the admin at about the same amount, so it won't have any effect on the stickers. But we have to reflect the fact that this management level person at Town Hall has got inspectors and all kinds of people reporting to her on a regular basis, as well as a budget over $300,000.
Does that answer your question?
Is this so are you saying that the 58,000 was for one individual or two?
One.
And now the 73,000 is for one individual or two?
I don't know where we're picking up. Are we picking up?
I'm just, it also includes the stipends for the Board of Health agent and the minute taker and the beach tester.
So there are more than one individual included in this amount?
In the 73, yes. So 58 of the 73 is one person.
Well, the 58 is last year's budget versus this year's
I know,
budget.
but there's still a salary number for Kristen, and it was close to
Yes.
15,000.
Does that answer your question? Anybody else have a question at this point? What's your name?
So, Jamie Russo. I'm actually kind of newer to Douglas. I'm teaching now in Douglas. We found Douglas, we happened to stumble upon it and loved it, loved the property. We moved from Jersey, which never had trees. Kind of stepping out of the teacher's shoes for 2 seconds, I want to thank Mr. Vieira for talking on behalf of the students, because as a mother of two newer children, so to say, but my daughter was in a private school for a little while before we brought her to preschool in Douglas, and seeing the joy on her face coming out every day, like, it hurts me. You know, it was a child who wasn't supposed to speak, she's talking, like, the service she gets. I just want to thank him again for saying on behalf of the kids, it just, as a parent, like, I think we do need to invest back in our children. They are the future, and if we don't start investing in them now, we're doing them a disservice, and what's going to happen.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, your name?
Hi, I'm Kevin Reardon. I'm the Douglas Teachers Association president. I was going to wait until the budget piece to speak. I'm not a politician. I don't know much about town government. I don't know about Chapter 70 and circuit breaker and different kinds of things. I'm a math teacher. I'm a golf coach, as a couple of the members of the committee know, because I coach your sons. As the teacher representative, I do what I do to try to help people and to try to make conditions at the schools better for my colleagues. I live in Seekonk, and I've been teaching in Douglas for 22 years. Sat on different negotiating committees over the time and always tried to come away doing the best that I could on behalf of the teachers. This latest go-around was very, very difficult. We suffered through COVID. We took a 0% during that time. We were offered a 0.5%. My response to that was, despite the objections of my colleagues, we have an agreement in good faith. We'll let the town keep that 0.5%. We were asked to come up with a new salary grid to help the town overcome those huge jumps in salaries that were being spoken of earlier. We didn't care about a new salary grid. If somebody was getting a 12% raise, they were pretty happy about that. Mr. Wagenheim and I sat down and came up with a new salary grid. Very, very clearly explained what the financial impact would be from year to year. We would have never agreed to any type of salary grid at the expense of 7 teaching positions. We would have still been at the table. The salary grid that we came up with was $175,000 less than the proposal that the town gave to us. We were doing everything we possibly could to make the conditions appealing for our colleagues, to retain the staff that we've had in Douglas for 22 years, and I'm not the most seasoned veteran there. Most of our staff, over 60% of our staff, is on the top step of the salary grid. So one of the things that we were told during negotiations, and I actually have a PowerPoint slide on it, that if you wouldn't mind, I'd just like to share the last slide with you, because I think it's very important. It says, in years 2 and 3, the town will put the amount needed to cover the contract's extra costs into the bottom line operating budget for the DPS local contribution above and beyond the rate of increase already in the 5-year plan. That's what we had to go on. That's what we sat at the table and agreed to. And nothing in there said anything about 7 positions being eliminated. So I appreciate the ability to speak here tonight. I just wanted to make sure you had that information before you make your decision.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else want to speak at this point, or wait till we carry on through the warrant? You can do that too, but if at any point, feel free to raise your hand. And all right, let's carry on, everybody. All right, Heather, you are up.
Article 1, Finance Committee report. I make a motion for the Finance Committee to recommend to approve the town to vote to hear and act upon the report and recommendation of the Finance Committee, and further to fix the salary and compensation of the elected officials as represented in the Finance Committee's FY24 budget recommendation, and further to approve the total budget of $833,259, consisting of $15,629 transferred from the reserve of reduction of excluded debt account, $385,000 transferred from the ambulance receipts reserve for appropriation, $10,000 retransferred from the wetland protection fund, $50,067 transferred from free cash, and the remaining $31,372,563 to be raised and appropriated as set forth in the column entitled the FY24 Finance Committee/Board of Selectmen/Town Administrator Recommended Budget in the handout entitled the Finance Committee Budget Message for Fiscal Year 2024 for the purpose of funding the annual the annual operating budget of the town for the fiscal year 2024. And this covers also as well Article 2 for the FY24 budget and Article 3 salaries of elected officials.
I make the motion to table that motion until the end of our review of the remaining articles and further debate with regard to Article.
Second.
Okay. Jean, question or comment?
Comment. The recommendation of the motion is with the understanding that you would have the same budget as the Town Administrative Board of Selectmen. So if anything changes, those headers would change.
Understood. Thank you.
So we have a motion that's been made and seconded to table this part of the discussion until when, Howard?
Until further debate. And so I would recommend that we go through the other articles and come back to this article for further debate.
Okay. Everybody clear on the motion? Any questions on Howard's motion? So if the motion passes, we would go right to Article 4 then.
Correct.
I think that's correct.
Okay. Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain?
Nay.
Are you a nay, Ryan?
I'm a nay.
Okay. Were you a yay or a nay, Carol?
I think I'm a nay.
Okay.
I mean, I'd just rather discuss it now. All these people are here.
We can do it either way.
You know, I just prefer to do it now if we're going to do it. All these people
Sure.
I want to hear about.
I'm not sure whether the people are here to address other articles that they feel they've got to be a part of.
Judging the crowd, I'm guessing no. I'm guessing once we discuss this.
I'll withdraw. Given that, if that's correct, then I'll withdraw.
Is that okay with you, Heather, to withdraw that motion? You're the seconder.
Let's do it now.
Okay, so motion is withdrawn. Permission given by the seconder, so we will carry on. Okay. So what was the number that you read, Heather?
What's the number in the Board of Selectmen?
Because this one is different than the one you said, I think.
The total budget of $31,833,259.
I think I can remind you, Mr. Chair, it's for the BBT. So the BBT is coming out.
Gotcha. The BBT is separate. Okay. One more time with feeling, Heather, the number?
833,259.
Okay, thank you, Jean. Okay, so we're treating Articles 1, 2, and 3 together, right? Is that your recommendation? Okay. So the recommendation then is to treat Articles 1, 2, and 3 together with that amount of $31,833,529. Anybody second that?
259.
259, sorry. Do we have a second on the motion to recommend?
To recommend or to debate?
Well, you
So wait a minute.
We've got a motion on the table, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
We've got a motion on the table. We can have a second to that motion, and then it opens it up to debate.
We need a second, though.
I'll second it.
Okay, Howard seconds. Okay, so any discussion on the motion?
I'm troubled by the representation made by Mr. Reardon.
You have a question then, Howard, or?
Well, no, it's a debate. Mr. Reardon, could you do me the courtesy, could you read that last line again?
Absolutely. Part of a PowerPoint presentation that was presented to us during negotiations.
By who? Do you know by who it was presented to you?
I believe it was Mr. Wood.
Okay.
It says, in years 2 and 3, the town will put the amount needed to cover the contract's extra costs into the bottom line operating budget for the DPS local contribution above and beyond the rate of increase already in the 5-year plan.
Okay, thank you. Well, the debate, I'm troubled by what sounds to me like a representation made by the town to the school department, the teachers, to help to bridge the gap, at least during years 1, 2, and 3. And I know we talked earlier about covering gap year 1 and some of year 2, but at this point, the sum of year 2 appears to be something I can't tell. I've done this long enough now to know I'm not really going to get into the nuts and bolts of every dime spent in the school committee budget. The representation made to me this evening is that by holding the line items on everything else, but for the pullback on the representation perhaps made from the town to the teachers with regard to covering the gap for years 2 and 3, the school department might have had that 7 other teachers or close to it. I can't say that. And Mr. Wojak, you're shaking your head. Can you once again address that, please? I'm entirely open to being completely
No, just a word of caution about using negotiation documents in this forum, because we exchanged many, many proposals, and what that specific document referred to or not may not be what we eventually agreed to, which was a very crystal clear spreadsheet that had the subsidy in year 1 and year 2 being free cash. But we went through a number of funding mechanisms and different ways to get money into this contract that were not exactly the same as what we eventually agreed upon.
Questions for Matt, anybody? Howard, does that answer your question?
Not yet. Bear with me. Do you have a perception as to whether there would have been something later that would have been, similarly situated, but making it clearer that bridge money in year 2 or year 3, as you sharpen the negotiations toward a final, might have been less guaranteed for years 2 and 3?
I was almost with you until the very end.
I curveballed it.
Yeah, I could never hit a curve. I'm a fastball guy.
So do you have any perception that there might have been something similarly represented, even in writing that would have made it clear as you got closer to the end of the negotiations that the town might not be prepared, as those negotiations got closer to a deal, to be...
So this is the final spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Or it's a portion of the final spreadsheet that was shared. I'll wait until it goes around. There's a lot going on in a very small table, so bear with me. I will do my best to explain it. I ran it all the way out to 27, but really the contract period is 23, 24, 25. And there you see the base payroll, and that number is tying up to a large roster-driven, so it's actual people, actual steps, actual grades, actual lanes, and what the change would be in their salary as they progressed through the table during the duration of the contract, which was the only thing we were negotiating those 3 years. There is a column entitled Local Contribution. I've abbreviated local contribution. That represents the 2% year-over-year increase to the base. 280, 285, 291. There's no big jumps there, right? That's a steady Eddie 2% increase year-over-year. The difference is the difference between 1 year's DTA payroll cost and the following years. So you can see that in year 1 of the contract, the cost was $467,355. Is everybody with me? So the subsidy, which is the amount the town was going to put in, remember, the school department could not afford to do this. They did not have the resources. The reason why comp reform was never done was because the town didn't put any skin in the game to support it. But here we are, putting 327, 347. It doesn't close to the base. It helps address this 467 so they can continue their operations. The subsidy lasts as long as it takes for their base budget to grow to the point where it now absorbs the full brunt of the contract cost. Understand? So we're giving them the 2% the first year to hold 2% again the next year, 2%. So by the time they have to address the whole contract, their base budget's gone up by 6.01%. That was the financial arrangement that I thought we had. On the right, you'll see I just added these numbers today. There's a number that represents the total cost of the contract in those 3 years, and a number that looks almost the same, which is the total amount of increase to the school's budget that the town committed to make.
That's these two numbers, Matt?
That's the 1.184 million versus the 1.012 million.
Okay.
So, before I got on this committee, it seemed to me that we had discussions about the fees for the courts. And one of the things I remember was this concept that we couldn't budget for next year, this year, until we knew exactly what we had next year. And one of the things that happened back then, I think that was one of the, at least in the time, I've been in town 25 years, one of the things that happened back then was we inadvertently or advertently sent a message across the community, the regional community, that Douglas was having troubles with funding and maintaining its teachers and its programs. I think my daughter's show choir was cut. The teacher that did the show choir was cut. By the fall, the teacher, I think, maybe was rehired, but the show choir was done. Okay? So I guess the question I have is, I've heard rumblings from both constituencies tonight suggest that there might be a bridge that could be covered so that you didn't, I think I heard July 1, decisions had to be made.
June 1 for staffing.
June 1.
For the fiscal year starts July 1.
June 1, decisions have to be made. And the annual town meeting and the special town meeting are May 1.
Not to put too fine up, Mr. Chairman, if I may. Notice must be given by June 1.
Correct.
The chairman is a former teacher. I assume at some point in your career you got a pink slip that ended up not being a pink slip. If you haven't, I can, there's a busload in Cumberland that did.
So isn't the point, and a woman back here who's relatively new to town and spoke eloquently about 2 young kids ready to come for our system, and that's the system, Courtney, we've talked about since I've been on the committee, we've tried to build. So I'd like to know tonight now how we're going to bridge that gap so that nobody gets a pink slip or people get possibly getting a pink slip but then don't. It seems to me.
That's where I am. So I just reject out of hand the idea that we cannot be resourceful enough and look at some combination, as I said, of existing reserves and future new growth to come up with a solution. The circuit breaker reserves at its lowest point went all the way down to $50,000. And this was back in the bad old days, right, when Douglas had absolutely no money and we were laying off people at town hall and all the rest of it. All those decisions are in the past. If you want to solve this problem, you can solve this problem.
So now, I don't know if I can make a motion, but this is what we do in the work I do during the day. We take the second call of the town administrator and the school superintendent, and they go out in the hallway and negotiate things so that we can, and the town finance director, so we can have you guys come back in half an hour with a conceptual proposal that we could discuss while we go through the rest of the items. No, why not?
Because I think there are too many moving parts. And I think to rush it here at the end puts us in a tough spot. As I said previously, there are costs that when they incur them on their side of the budget, come over to ours. Right, and so that's an analysis and a thoughtfulness that I don't think we do in half an hour in a finance committee meeting.
Question, I'm sorry, you're the chair.
Another former chairman wearing his heart on his sleeve.
All right,
say your name again, okay?
So I'm a resident here, I'm a parent,
Say your name again.
Monique Salvis.
Okay, Monique.
And, you know, to know that we were left with such a big cut to the school budget was really disheartening. You know, my kids are just starting middle school. You know, I'd like to think that our town can offer our kids some programming that can lead them into the 21st century. I mean, if you look at surrounding towns, they have a lot more than we have in Douglas. So when I'm looking at this budget, I'm looking at what's been proposed in 2024, what's been handed out in 2023 to 2024. That line item that I referred to was a big jump from what was in 2022 to 2023. I also see town clerk wages. That's a big jump from what we've increased before. $126,410, now we're increasing $24,000 there over 1 year. When I look at selectmen wages, we're increasing $14,000 over 1 year, as opposed to the increase that was made the year before. So I'm going through this, and I'm trying to understand more of what the administrator's goal is in this budget. So those are questions I have still for those increases, and I think a town is only as good as their educational system.
Can I take this for a minute?
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, Howard.
So one thing I'd like to say to the parents, Matt knows, we talked about this, and to Courtney and Paul and everyone in this room and everybody in our town, this town has done a tremendous job in the last 10 years of advocating in the schools and the teachers, the programs, for bringing programs to your kids for the 21st century. Today, we have Douglas High School graduates currently at Harvard University, at Princeton University, at Georgetown University, and a whole host of other high-end and medium and every opportunity university across the land. This program has been spectacular in the last 5 years for the opportunities that your kids have. So we're trying to make this all work, but understand, we've already got a great program for your kids.
Well, I have looked at options that are outside of the district, and I'll be perfectly honest, because I know what I want for my kids.
Sure.
Justin?
Mr. Chairman, I don't...
Go ahead. Hang on a minute, Justin. Go ahead, Matt.
There is a document that has facts in it that is worth not losing sight of, and that is the school committee's approved budget. The programmatic adjustments that many people want or enjoy or value are not necessarily reflected in what the cost increases year over year are as identified in that budget document. This budget document is making a very large investment in special education, adjustment counseling, and psychology. Nobody, look, I have 6 kids, 4 of them are in public school. These are really important priorities. They are worthy of discussion. Nobody on the town side would say they are not. But that conversation isn't about the more general picture of the school department's operations. It's specifically with those things that the superintendent recommended, and then the school committee cut back to get to these numbers. That's what we're really talking about here in terms of what is or is not funded. I just want to, I'm big about trying to keep things in context. The compensation reform for the town cost maybe $200,000, right? With all of the changes that we made. And this year's increase to the school department is whatever it comes out to, the 160 plus the 200 some odd thousand. So it's well above that. We're not talking about the same thing. But we are, on the town side, we have been, one of the reasons why we've been so, frankly, trying to hold costs down across the entire town budget was to get to the point where we could do some comp reform for long-suffering employees who went through years of no COLAs, no steps, no nothing. This is the last group. Our non-union staff are the last group to have any conversation with the administration of the town about improving their salaries and wages. We've already dealt with 2 contracts with the police, 2 contracts with firefighters, and the Douglas Teachers Association. This is the last group that is still operating under comp tables that are really more valid for 2014 than they are 2023.
Okay, we had a hand. Go ahead, say your name.
My name is Justin Snook. I'm the library director. I'm a parent. I have kids. And I am extremely uncomfortable with how this is being portrayed as the town is not willing to give the schools what they need. In 2018, when people talk about the bad old times, they talk about the times before the passage of an override. That override was passed by library patrons, by a homeschooling community, by a Vote Yes committee that came together and did what was necessary to keep the town afloat. And do you know what the library got out of it? We got to keep existing. We didn't get a huge budget bump. We didn't ask for anything else. You know what my budget is this year at the library? It's $300,000-ish. So we get to pass the overrides while other people get to reap the benefits of them. And I hate to turn it into a confrontational thing, but it's some point we all have to kind of suffer together. The library is taking a 1% operational increase, this year, as was requested, so we can make compensation work. The town's other departments have suffered. It's a miracle what some of these people are able to do on a, duct tape and shoestring budget. And, whenever we're seeing numbers increase through this compensation cycle, it's getting us where we need to be, not giving people above and beyond what they should have. I mean, it's getting us where we deserve. And, to see a number equal to my budget, to an entire departmental budget, thrown out as, this is extra to make it work, and if we don't get it, we're going to fire 7 people. That's not a genuine, it's not fair. It's not fair to the town administrator. It's not fair to the finance committee. It's not fair to the rest of the town. That's all I have to say.
Okay, go ahead, ma'am. What's your name?
Hi, Caroline Fitzpatrick. I'm a resident of Douglas. 4 children have already gone through the schools, and I'm a teacher there. I'm in my 21st year. I think we're missing a very important point that Ms. Keegan had stated, is that she had sent 2 emails asking, is this the correct number that we are working with? And it was with the larger amount that was was agreed upon. And she never received confirmation or anything saying, no, this is not the right amount of money. So I think we're missing, that's a very important piece. Our school administration reached out, trying to get confirmation, is this the right number? And we did not hear back. And so now, all of a sudden, this is a 12th hour, oh no, this is not what it meant. But there was an opportunity to address this before it comes to this point. And I think that's something I'd like you all to consider as we're discussing this, is we went by one set of assumptions that we were not told was wrong until now. And I think that's very important if we're talking about communication and not pitting one department against another. I think it's pretty obvious that we've been pitted against each other. Thank you.
So one of the things we've been working under as a finance committee is that in general we have a 1% increase in the new budget. Highway, police, fire, everybody's been told you have 1% and live with it, basically. So as we look at the budget before us, we want to be loyal to that 1%. And I think as a finance committee, I'm just speaking for myself now, but the budget that we recommend to the town meeting needs to be a budget that we can afford in our town. And you look at the police, the fire, the highway, they're all living with a 1%. So this idea that if we recommend to the town meeting a budget that's a 1% increase, and the school department, for instance, is short some funds that they think they need to carry on, is there a way, and I'm going to channel Howard, is there a way that somehow between when the town meeting happens and later, that we can come up with a way to, and Matt mentioned this too, to fund those things that are so important? I mean, we all agree with that, but we also know that we're not awash in cash. And we've been under this stricture of roughly 1% for everybody. So I think that's another thing to keep in mind too, is we don't have unlimited funds and we're trying to do the best we can with that 1% increase. And maybe there will be a way we can work out some of those other issues later. Anybody else have something new to add? Because I'd like to carry on with the agenda if possible. Yeah, go ahead and say your name again.
Jamie Russo.
Okay.
I just want to say one thing that we've been throwing around between all 4 of the schools, and I apologize, but compliance. So now I'm throwing out my special ed hat. I'm sorry, it's very late. And we are trying daily to stay within the compliance of all of the IEPs with the staff that we have. But now we have to take into an account when a staff is absent. We don't have the subs, we don't have the capacity. And we are all covering each other. So we are doing what everybody is saying. We are giving up lunches and preps and everything, CPT. We're running meetings any time of the day that we're asked. And we're doing this now with 5 years ago, 6 years ago when I started, less staff. And to cut even more staff, that compliance, where are we going to stand?
Okay, thank you. Anyone else, something new?
I'd like to speak if I could.
Okay, go ahead, Ryan, thank you.
So, first of all, let me say I have 3 kids in the public schools, right? So I'm fully aware of what they do for our children, and I thank everyone who contributes to that. Unfortunately, we're put into almost a really hard spot here, right? Even if we want to fund the additional approximately $350,000, to ask us the night we're about to approve the budget to do that is just not really feasible, right? I don't think we could find $50,000 in the budget, never mind $350,000. So it's disappointing that that's where we are, but it is where we are, and at this late date, I don't think we as a committee can fix it. My hope would be that the school and the town would come together in avenues that we really don't have any control over in terms of free cash use and use of revolving funds to fill the gap going forward. Now, we can't use the free cash, I don't believe, on this town meeting because the warrant is closed, but I would assume we could do that in the fall town meeting. And I hope the school would be willing to close the gap with some of their revolving funds. The hope is better financial times are coming. We all see the warehouse that's being built. We all see the bridge that's going to connect on your way to 146. I do think, and we anticipate having better revenues going forward in future years. Those revenues have not come to bear yet. The building is not built and not on the tax roll yet. That will happen next year, is our understanding. So my hope is between the town and the school, they could come to some sort of resolution to get us through this time, so no teachers have to be cut, and thus allow us to the better time, financial times to come, and then maybe we as a committee could resolve this, next January when we start the budget process. Unfortunately, trying to fill a budget gap like this the day we're trying to approve the budget, it's just not reasonable and possible. So, thank you.
Okay, anybody else on the committee have a comment? So we have a motion that's been made and seconded to recommend the amount of $31,833,259. We've had comments from the public and others. Anybody else on the motion? Okay.
If I may.
Yeah, go ahead, Heather.
My 2 cents. So I think it's an opportunity, I think, for the collaboration like we did with the town administrators, the school, the finance committee, the board of selectmen, take the opportunity the next 2 weeks before we go to town meeting and come up with a game plan of how we're going to get there. I think we all can work collaboratively. We've done it in the past. I agree. It's kind of hard at the 11th hour that we're in right now to try to fix it. But I think all the parties here are all committed to finding a solution to this. And I think it will be achievable. So I would say we recommend as is, but we do have some homework to do. And that's going to involve all of us coming back to the table together to be collaborative, because that's the only way the kids are going to win and the town's going to win.
Okay, thank you, Heather. Anybody else?
I don't understand how we can recommend it as is if we're looking at, let's say within 2 weeks, having something else.
I don't know what the plan's going to be, and like I said, I think it's a collaborative.
I'd like to understand that process. I agree with the concept, but I'd like to understand the available process.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think within the context of open town meeting, which is a beautiful thing, one may present amendments, and we will have to have a discussion with the moderator to make sure that he's aware that they may be presented in writing. But I don't really want to do a half an hour thing, but it doesn't have to wait until November either if we can roll up our sleeves and get something done. But it would be in the form of an amendment at this point.
Can I get the superintendent of the schools? There you go. Are you committed to working with the town administrator over the next several weeks?
I'd be more than happy to clear my schedule the next 3 days to sit down and work on this with Matt and anyone else in the town. I agree with you, Matt. It's very well going to take an amendment on town meeting floor to find a way to bridge that 335. More than willing to clear my calendar the next 3 days to sit down. Could be here at 7:30 tomorrow morning to start.
Oh, you're killing me now.
8:30? I could do 8:30.
I wouldn't bid till 9:30.
I could do 8:30 tomorrow. I'll bring the coffee.
All right.
Yeah.
Jean, you want to identify yourself for the audience, Jean?
I really don't. I guess I'm confused.
Yep.
And you'll have to help me out with this. The Finance Committee is going to vote a recommendation tonight.
Correct.
You will have your own, you're either going to combine with the existing column or you're going to create your own column with the use of funding sources that Heather read. Okay. The amendment at town meeting, and again, it's not a guarantee because it depends on whether the moderator considers it within the scope of the article. I'm curious to see what resolution. Are you looking for an additional use of free cash to help bridge that gap? Are you looking for a commitment from the school that they'll use additional circuit breaker and school choice to offset that use of free cash?
Yes, 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 and yes.
I think it's all of the, nothing thrown out.
If it's the use of free cash, then I think it's appropriate for this committee, as part of your recommendation, to put that in now. But again, because then your recommendation is the motion that's on the floor on town meeting.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes things just get way too formal for me. Look, we've got to be realists and do things the right way and actually identify funding sources that will, if we give, do you want a non-recurring source for this? No, right? Because we'll be right back at this. So we've got to think this through. And, frankly, any amendment to the budget that has an identified funding source where the funds are truly available is well within the scope of the budget, for crying out loud. That's not an issue. But, if you really don't want to act tonight, you have in the past said you would withhold judgment until your meeting right before town meeting to take a stance as a finance committee. So I'm not asking, it's not really a punt, it's just a timeout.
It seems inconceivable to me that we'd approve a budget tonight and at a town meeting get the town to swing with us to approve a different budget that included $1 more than what was approved a month earlier.
Well, except that you have had all this conversation, which I think lays a foundation.
It hasn't been my experience with the town voting on or approving a budget. It might, but it hasn't been my perception.
Now, I would like to continue my comments in that I have, for the last 5 or 6 years, treated the annual town meeting, the fall town meeting, as really the operating budget for the following fiscal year.
Right.
And it has been our historical practice to wait until new growth has been certified and to go back to those departments and supplement them at that time. That would be my recommendation. So, if new growth comes in, and we're probably going to certify a little bit earlier this year, and we have that number available, we at that time would look...
When?
In the summerish. We could do that work. And again, it would take some understanding on both sides that we would support that additional funding for the fall town meeting. Again, that's my recommendation. That's the historical practice of the town. We have looked at that fall town meeting, and there's a standard article to supplement the appropriations before the tax rate is set.
So the punt, if people were even in favor, would be to table any vote or recommendation with regard to 1 through 3 until the night of, when you've got because you can't have a new article because
it would be,
it's already been published.
It would be an amendment.
This would stand alone. This town meeting would close, and it would be the fall town meeting that you'd be working at. It's no different than the November town meeting we had last year, where we increased the tree warden. And we look at those budgets that we didn't fund to the extent that we wanted to fund, but we had a reoccurring revenue source that we were using for the operating budget.
Well, could the school operate June 1, 2023 with a perception that there was an agreement in place to fund things that they were going to say on June 1 were going to occur, and then it would be back funded in November?
Well, first of all, we can't obligate a future town meeting, so we can't it would, it's a trust issue, really. It's whether or not they would.
Well, that's my question.
Well, to Mr. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
One of the things I'm kind of hearing in these conversations, and forgive me, I'm going to propose a hypothetical here, Howard, right? So if I'm hearing what Gene's saying is we could potentially vote to recommend and approve said budget as it stands now. There is free cash, and there's circuit breaker funds, and there's school choice funds. Well,
free cash is appropriated.
Right, free cash is appropriated. So let me take that off the table for the time being. But you've got circuit breaker funds and you've got school choice funds. Between the two of them, approximating $1 million. On the slides or the sheets that Courtney handed out tonight, there's 2 line items labeled contingency on those for $250,000 between the 2 budgets, or the 2 funds. So roughly $500,000. Hypothetically speaking, we could potentially, the school could potentially choose to use those funds with the agreement, let's say, that at the fall town meeting, once new growth is certified and we have accurate revenue numbers or more solid revenue numbers coming into the next fiscal year, that the town could then back fund or refund, if you will, to increase the appropriation to the schools, to allow the schools to restore those circuit breaker and school choice funds. And in my personal opinion, I think having those labeled contingencies are for the, shall I say, the oh shoot fund, you know, to not offend the FCC here tonight. You know, and
we don't have an oh shoot fund on the town side.
So, you know, I think this is one of those times when we're in one of those oh shoot situations of how do we bridge that gap between now in the spring and later in the fall when more funds theoretically should be available to us.
If I may,
Paul, go ahead.
I love the concept, and I would respectfully ask that to use the word punt until town meeting. That would give us the opportunity to iron out some of that language and to have a discussion and make sure we have something in writing where there is some trust and a conversation, so that between now and town meeting, myself, Matt, and whoever else needs to be involved can have that discussion, and then you could certify half hour, whatever the time meeting is before town meeting, a budget that includes the appropriate amount.
But how?
So now it would be certifying the current budget.
You'd be certified.
The current budget, because
Current budget.
the
But
concept would be that you'd
if that
that
concept,
in the interim, your agreement for Mike's plan was put in
if that
place.
plan actually, we're just hearing it now, we would have to sit and look. It might be a combination of that and free cash, or that and something else.
But would
I'd
be
love
able to vote on the night of, half an hour before, knowing whether you've been able to get your homework done.
Correct.
A little school reference there.
But I think, if I may, I don't think the budget number as it's been, the Board of Selectmen's and the town administrator's budget would change. Those new revenue numbers would come in at the fall town meeting, not at the May meeting.
If we use the revenue.
If the school was to dig into its own, forgive the expression, its own pocket.
Correct.
To fund the gap temporarily until we could reappropriate funds at the fall.
But it could also be, it could be, let's use 330 as a number. It could be the school funding half of that through this mechanism, the town funding half of it through free cash, and then at fall town meeting, using another mechanism to backfill both the school and the town.
Yeah.
Potentially. But we need to have a discussion.
I'm not going to belabor it, Mr. Chairman, but what Mr. Hutnack is suggesting is more or less exactly where my mind was at. That we're just going to use a filler, right? And then when you actually have, because what you want to identify as recurring revenues, you would backfill with those, so that they can go to the base.
Right.
So where we stand now, then, we have a motion that's been made and seconded to recommend the balanced budget as presented by the paperwork before us. So Heather, is your understanding then that if that motion passes, homework follows later, or we table, wait for new info, and then vote finally May 1 at 6:30 p.m.?
You can do either or, correct me if I'm wrong. We can pass it here, they do their homework, or we can wait till the night of town meeting like we meet before and then take the vote there.
My opinion would be tabling it makes the parties act in good faith between now and then.
Carol, go ahead.
My problem with this is we're trying not to use these one-time funds, recurring funds, and that's why we have to wait to find out what the new growth numbers are. And you're not going to get those until July, right?
It'll be after town meeting, let me just say that.
Right, it will be after the town meeting. So I think we got, I'm for certifying or voting on the budget that we have right now.
So just for clarity.
Okay, anybody else? Go ahead.
Well, I just want to understand, how if we decide to table it, we would then send the flyer out with no budget recommendation from the Finance Committee?
That's correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't like that idea.
That's right.
Okay, so Sandy, any thoughts on the process?
I would like to just go forward with this and then with good faith that we can work together to make it happen.
So anyway, we have a motion that's been made and seconded now on the number before us. There's not an active motion to table it until May 1. Is that correct?
That is correct from my
Okay.
understanding.
All right. Are you all set to vote on that motion then, everybody?
Yes.
Okay, so the motion is, and we're combining Articles 1, 2, and 3 together, right, Heather?
Yes.
So the motion is, as Heather made it, and I think, Mike, you seconded it, right? Or it is, okay. Howard seconded, yeah. So everybody clear on the motion? So if the motion passes, we're...
Point of order, can we just read the motion again so everybody knows what we're doing? Table,
Heather,
crowd, everything.
ready?
That would
Okay.
be great, thank you.
Motion for the Finance Committee to recommend that the town vote to hear and act upon the report and recommendations of the Finance Committee, and further to fix the salary and compensation of elected officials as presented, in the Finance Committee's FY24 budget recommendation, and further to approve a total budget of $31,833,259, consisting of $15,629 transferred from the reserve for reduction of excluded debt account, $385,000 transferred from the ambulance receipts reserved for appropriation, $10,000 transferred from the Wetlands Protection Fund, $50,067 transferred from free cash, and the remaining $31,372,563 to be raised and appropriated as set forth in the column entitled FY24 Finance Committee Board of Selectmen Town Administrator Recommended Budget, in the handout entitled The Finance Committee Budget Message for Fiscal Year 2024, for the purpose of funding the annual operating budget of town for the fiscal year 2024.
And then understand, everybody, that the vote includes Articles 1, 2, and 3, correct? So the motion, Jean?
And again, I want to remind you that those columns don't exist yet. So currently it stands as a Town Administrative Board of Selectmen requested and a Finance Committee its own column. So you would have to vote to approve the same budget to have it retitled.
If we approve that amount, isn't that the same budget?
Well, as long as all the numbers stay the same in the same categories, yes.
Okay. Is that everybody's understanding that it's the same budget as proposed by the selectmen? Okay. All right, all in favor?
I'm sorry, can we add an amendment that says that to the motion?
What's a good way to word that, Jean?
I would just add,
So moved.
we recommend the selectmen and town administrator budget. That's all.
Okay.
I would
Do
just
it
add
that
that, just so it's clear to everybody that's what we're doing.
Okay. Everybody good with that?
So moved.
Okay. Second on that
Start to
amendment?
Second the amendment?
Okay. All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
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 Opposed, abstain, Howard abstained. We all say aye. All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Of the main?
Of the main motion, yeah. Did you say aye or?
I did not.
Okay. Do we need to make the motion again?
No.
Okay. So all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Abstain? So 6-1. So the idea then, everybody, is that we're going to recommend the budget as presented by the selectmen, with the understanding that between now and the town meeting, people will work together to try to work on some of these issues for that $335,000 for the school. And we will carry on in good faith.
Right, 8:30 tomorrow?
You bring the coffee, I bring the donut.
Sounds good. See you then.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Heather, ready to carry on? So we're going to carry on through the warrant, everybody. You're welcome to stay and listen, or...
So Article 4, the Blackstone Valley Vocational Regional School District FY24 budget. I make a motion for the Finance Committee to recommend for the town vote to raise and appropriate this amount of $1,644,686 for the operating and capital assessment by the Blackstone Valley Vocational Regional School District for the fiscal year commencing July 1st, 2022, with the exclusion of $35,677 of Proposition 2.5 exempt funds to be applied against the debt service associated with the Douglas's previously 2001 voted amount for the district's addition/renovation project.
Second? Mike?
Second.
Okay. Discussion on the motion? So all in favor of recommending, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Abstain? So 6-1, recommend to approve. Or vote to recommend.
Three former chairmen.
Heather, carry on.
Article number 5, the FY24 Transfer Station Enterprise Fund. I make a motion for the Finance Committee to recommend to the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $320,000 from the transfer funds, charges, and fees, and transfer the sum of $30,000 from retained earnings for a total of $350,000 to operate and maintain the transfer stations.
Second.
Mike seconds. Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Unanimous to recommend? And for my little background, everybody, I'm just saying these are the normal procedures to fund enterprise accounts, something like that. So, all right, carry on, Heather.
Article number 6, FY24 Water/Sewer Enterprise Fund. I make a motion for the Finance Committee to recommend to the town to vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,364,005 from the water and sewer charges and fees, transfer the sum of $452,494 from the water/sewer retained earnings, the sewer system development of $105,000, the water systems development of $120,000, reserved for debt in the amount of $102,494, and retained earnings of $125,000, for a total budget of $1,816,499 to operate and maintain the water/sewer department.
Second.
Mike seconds. Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Abstain? So unanimous to recommend. Okay, Heather?
Article number 7 is the FY24 PEG access and cable receipts reserved for appropriation. I make the motion for the Finance Committee to recommend the town vote to transfer the sum of $103,103 from the PEG access and cable receipts reserved for appropriation to operate and maintain the cable department.
Second.
Second by Mike. Discussion?
I'm sorry, one quick question. I know the cable contract's being renewed. Has that been settled yet? Are they still negotiating?
Nobody's beating down the door.
Guess my question is not welcome.
It is an exercise akin to negotiating your phone bill with AT&T. So yes, it's still being negotiated.
Okay.
We will soon agree.
I just was curious if the new
franchise fee will not be terribly different than the franchise fee.
I understand, but I just was curious it was included in this, and it appears it was not, so thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Anybody else on Article 7? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries unanimously to recommend Article 7. Anybody know what PEG stands for? PEG access?
Public educational and government.
Yeah,
From the back
public
row.
educational and government. There we go. Thanks, Sarah. Heather?
Article number 8, recurring business. I make a motion for the Finance Committee to recommend the town vote to approve subsections A through I as printed in the warrant. And do I need to read each one? Or can I say?
No.
As
As printed in the warrant. It's fine.
printed in the warrant.
Mike, you second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. So this is something that is just recurring every year needs to be voted and approved. So all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries unanimously for Article 8. Are you abstaining, Howard?
And my vote in favor.
Okay. Article 9, Heather?
Article 9, personnel bylaw classification and update. I make a motion for the Finance Committee to recommend to the town to vote to approve the personal classification and compensation plans for fiscal year 2024 as written in the warrant.
Second.
Second by Mike.
Question?
Okay, questions? Please say your name.
Kristen Stevens. I'm chair of the Personnel Advisory Board, and I'm concerned at this point in time that we're just totally ignoring the system that we have in place for the classification. And we've tried to speak with the administrator, but there is a gag order in place on page, which I could tell you. I would like to hand this pamphlet to you on what we do. And basically, we bought a municipal position evaluation a few years ago for $50,000. And it takes 12 factors to analyze, but we need job descriptions. And he has refused to give us job descriptions for the past 2 years, and he has refused to listen to us. So, my packet's here, if you'd like one. Get one?
So you're Kristen.
Kristen Stevens, yes,
Okay.
dear, and I'm chair. And we really have been trying to meet with him, but like I said, we have not gotten job reviews, but we need the job descriptions in order to evaluate, because there is 12 factors to evaluate. And I know I had heard that they talk about steps. Well, you don't really get a step unless you go through an evaluation, yearly evaluation. You might receive a step, but you don't get it within 10 years. So it's really questionable. On the other pages, what we have done, is over here where you see that there's green and white. The white is how we evaluate with a number next to it, and then the class. And the green is the person's self-evaluation. We handed out the exact same form that we do the evaluations on. We gave it to the employees. Some didn't get back to us, which was basically it was the surge, all these in here, which was senior center, water department. None of those people gave it back to us. Well, anyways, it was just to compare it to see where we might need to upgrade this format, so that we analyze it on. And I know there was some concerns talking about terminology. Yes, there's terminology like typewriters. We don't use typewriters anymore. But really, keyboards are a lot easier. The same with file cabinets. We don't use those anymore. We do a drop and block as far as over the computer. So those are easier. So those terminologies can be easily fixed. I mean, if you have any questions?
Well, Kristen,
yes.
I'm just looking at some of the material that we received from our town administrator on compensation table reform, and it has a lot of the same kind of lingo in it for evaluation.
But they don't evaluate. That's the problem. He has not given evaluations in a couple of years. The board, Personnel Advisory Board now, has asked constantly as if they've had their yearly reviews. And at one point, even one of the selectmen meetings, they mentioned that for 6 years, the financial person here hadn't got a review. Talked to the people at the dump, they had good reviews. So they weren't doing reviews. And that was one of the things we tried to monitor. And if, like I said, we paid that much money for it, we analyze it, and we try to keep track of those things. And if you want to do this so-called benchmarking thing, which is within a certain range, you know, then really the personnel board will no longer exist. And they can say advisory, but they've never even come to our meeting. They've never told us about this package that you have. I have to come here or watch it on the cable station. So I don't know what to say, but I will say this. I started looking at data, and according to their new thing, you have $141,000 for a 30-year M4. So I was wondering, is the M4 30 years? Is the person in that job 30 years? Because I looked at data on the M5, which is now an M4, And it said here, Annual Report 2020, page 48, the budget for 2021 Highway Superintendent was 102, but the annual gross wages for the person was 115. So there's a $13,000 difference. So he must be getting overtime, snow plowing or something. I don't know. But anyways.
I think John wants to respond to that.
I'll respond.
Yeah, fine.
Yep. John Farnell, Highway Superintendent, Deputy Fire Chief, softball coach at the school. That's where the difference in the
Money
funding
is, okay.
Okay.
So you have 30 years in? How many years in do you have?
I have 25 years.
25, so you would go right to 25 years, according to his chart, then.
Speaking of people.
So Kristen, if you have...
So it'd be from 115 to 135, right? 25 years.
So Kristen, just speak to the Finance Committee,
Okay, I'm sorry.
So,
And I'll,
John,
so the last thing is I do not get overtime.
Okay, just wanted to know.
So Kristen, you know, we're at the very end of this process. I think what would be helpful is if we had what you gave us.
Right.
And we can use that for reference. And part of what's going on with the compensation reform are these new levels of oversight and so on, and we can sort of keep an eye, maybe.
Who's keeping an eye? I don't understand, as far as like, someone looks at towns and says, oh, they're making this much, and oh, they're making this much, but we should make that much.
Well, we are the Finance Committee.
And you analyze the job and position?
And we deal with money in the town, so that would be one thing we could keep an eye on in terms of how the oversight is going. But,
like I said, he has not met with us, he's discussed it, or anything else.
and this is all real brand new for us right now, and for us to read it all over.
I understand that, but like I said,
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out when we would be spoken to as far as what was going on.
Okay.
Okay, because this...
You want to speak to this, Matt?
Quite enough, all right? The old compensation system is being thrown out and replaced with a new one, period. The Personnel Advisory Board was invited to a number of meetings and declined to respond to Lisa Freeman's email. And we have that. Yes, you did. So they were sent to the address that we have for you. At the end of the day, the Town Administrator Act passed in 2012 made the town administrator the personnel director for the town, establishing the policies with the approval of the select board. That is what we are doing. That is what we're going to continue to do.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Kristen.
Did you send emails to Ellie and Betty Ann as well?
I guess you could check.
Yeah.
All right, did we vote on 9 yet or not? I don't think so.
I think it's been, motion's been made and seconded.
Okay.
Anything you want to discuss?
Well, I'm surprised that they weren't involved in these discussions, that's all. I'm surprised that Ellie seems to always be on everything.
Ellie goes to everything.
What's that?
Ellie goes to everything.
She does. And that's why I'm surprised. But this lady said she didn't get the email, and perhaps she didn't because she might be like me. I don't see half of them either. But Ellie's right on things.
All right, we ready to vote, everybody? So, made and seconded Article 9. Any more discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstained. Motion carries unanimously to recommend Article 9. Heather.
Article 10, adoption of the revised FY24 through FY28 capital improvement plan. I make the motion for the Finance Committee to recommend to the town to vote to transfer the sum of $1,334,985 from the available funds to fund the following capital projects and associated costs.
As listed in the warrant.
As listed in the warrant.
Okay. Second by Mike, thank you. Any discussion on the capital improvement list? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries unanimously for Article 10. Floodplain bylaw, Article 11. Matt, you've been waiting so patiently all night for this, haven't you? But so go ahead, Heather.
Article 11, zoning bylaw amend section 8.3 floodplain bylaw. Motion for the Finance Committee to recommend the town vote to amend the section 8.3 floodplain bylaw of the Douglas zoning bylaw as printed in the warrant.
Seconded.
Seconded by Mike. Before we carry on, I want to read for the group what I wrote for the background for the voter information flyer. Perhaps you remember if you've read it already, but because FEMA is updating its maps for the Quinnebog watershed, of which Douglas is a part, this article will bring our bylaw up to current policies and enable the town to remain active in the National Flood Insurance Program. That sound pretty good, Matt?
Yep.
Okay. So that will be in the voter information flyer with your permission, everybody. Any discussion?
I just want to say that I'm going to vote no because the FEMA hasn't gotten us the maps yet. So they want us to vote on something, they didn't give us the maps, I say no, I'm not voting for it.
We have Mr. Benoit here to speak to that. Okay, Mike? Matt, sorry.
I know it's
This is Mike, this is
Good evening, members of the Finance Committee. Matthew Benoit, Director of Community Development. I did get an update on what the error was on the maps. It's the date printed on it. The current old maps read June 7th. The issue is, I'm going to read this from FEMA. Please be advised that the final printed copies of the firm and FIS recently mailed to your community listed an incorrect date. You will receive corrected copies of those firm maps with the correct effective date of June 21st, 2023. That date is what is referenced in our bylaw as the date of the maps. So the error was a very simple grammatical error of printing the wrong date on the maps that they circulated to all 14
do we actually have the maps? Because when I came into your office, you couldn't find one that had to do with Douglas.
Correct. The only ones we have are the June 7th maps. Then we do have those that just printed with the wrong date, and they're going to replace those.
But you couldn't even find those when I was in there.
Oh, they're there. And plus, and through the chair, we also got CMRPC's townwide map, and it's on the table back there.
Okay, good.
I got it today.
So the maps we have are good, they just have the wrong date on it.
That's it. And they will be
When
sent
did
with
they
the correct
finally
date.
tell you that?
They gave this to me in a letter that was dated March 13th, but the email came a lot later.
When did the email come?
Might take me a moment, but I believe it was at least a week after. From DCR and not from FEMA. So I got it from the state.
A week after what?
The date of this letter, the 13th. I believe it was the 20th or so.
All right.
So Carol, the maps were there, they just have the wrong date on it.
They have the wrong date.
Correct.
Sounds like the government.
Yes.
Any more comments or questions on Article 11, the floodplain bylaw? Okay, all in favor say aye.
I'll say aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain?
I'll abstain, beyond my area of knowledge, I'll be honest.
So we have 6 yays and 1 abstention, right? How many are here? 7? Okay. Heather, carry on.
Article 12, street acceptance, Cobblestone Lane and Meeting House Lane. A motion for the Finance Committee to recommend the town vote to accept the public way Cobblestone Lane Station 12+50 to 20+443.72 or the end of the road on all associated easements, and the Meeting House Lane Station 1+100 to 82.55 or the end of the road and all associated easements as herefore laid out by the Board of Selectmen as shown on the plans entitled Cobblestone and Meeting Street Lane Acceptance Plan in Douglas, Massachusetts, dated October 30th, 2018, and prepared by Gear and Hannon, a copy of which is on file with the town clerk, and will further vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to acquire by gift, purchase, or eminent domain rights sufficient to use the Cobblestone Lane Station 12+50 to 20+43.72 or the end of the road and all associated easements, and a Meeting House Lane Station 1+100 to 3+82.55 or the end of the road and all associated easements for the purpose of for which public ways are used in the town of Douglas, and further to authorize the Board of Selectmen to enter all agreements and take all related actions necessary or appropriate to carry out such acquisitions on such terms and conditions as the Board of Selectmen deems appropriate.
Second by Mike. And this is what I'm proposing for the voter flyer. The Stonegate subdivision off of Franklin Street near the water tank was approved in 2002 and has 2 streets that have not been accepted by the town. This article will add those streets to the list of streets that the town will maintain. Does that sound okay, everybody, for background? I thought the water tank was a nice touch.
Where the water tank used to be?
It's still there. Did they move it? And the old railroad bed is there too. I should have said the old railroad.
Where the old oak tree used to be.
Yeah. Any discussion on that?
Quick question, did the planning board vote to approve the recommendation?
They voted to, not sponsor, but yes, to recommend favorable action on it.
Thank you.
Good.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstain. Motion carries unanimously for Article 12 and Article 13, Heather.
Article 13, I'm getting ahead of myself. Water Asset Management Project. Motion for the Finance Committee to recommend the town vote to appropriate the sum of $140,000 for the Douglas Water Assessment Management Plan project, which is on the Massachusetts 2023 Drinking Water State Revolving Fund Asset Management Planning Project list. The total project cost of $140,000 is comprised of $84,000 grant, 60% of the total project cost, which the town must be reimbursed for in 2 payments of approximately $42,000, each at approximately the 50 and 100% project completion stage by Mass DEP and the Massachusetts Clean Water Trust. The balance of the project will be comprised of in-kind services provided by the town valued at $28,000 and transfer the sum of $28,000 from retained earnings for the Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund.
Second.
Mike seconds.
For the record, I'll just say it's not really fair to Heather that we put the 2 lengthiest motions at the end of the night.
This is the little background I wrote. I checked with Bob on this. Because the state makes money available for towns to work on water and sewer projects, this article will enable the Water Sewer Department to work on the Douglas Water Asset Management Plan project at minimal cost to the town. I think that was okay with him. That sound okay with everybody?
I think it's no cost to the town, because it's the 28,000 is the enterprise fund. And then the 28,000 of their like in-kind service is also paid out of the enterprise fund. So I say that it's...
I thought we had to pony up like 20 or something.
No, it's the enterprise fund that's funding the cash portion.
Oh, gotcha. Well, good catch, Carol.
No cost to the town.
No cost to the town, right?
The rate is yes, but not the town.
Yeah.
The ratepayers.
Anybody want to see the ratepayers?
That's right. No cost to the town ratepayers.
No.
Maybe we should be close to adjournment.
Okay, any more discussion on that article? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstain. Motion carries unanimously for Article 13. At no cost to the town, right? Okay.
I know.
Okay, let's carry on with our agenda, everybody. Any discussion on the stuff I'd sent you in terms of the voter flyer? Everybody good with the opening message and so on?
Very
Okay.
nicely written.
Oh, thanks. Highway Department, anything on snow and ice?
What do you want to know?
It's not snowing anymore.
Do we have money left in the...
Oh, you jinxed us.
No, we just had to put up
Did
another,
we spend it all, John?
We did, and then,
another 75, right?
yeah, we got another 75, and I have about $35,000 of that left.
Okay.
And the salt shed is leaking salt that's so full for next year.
Okay.
So,
Fantastic.
yep,
All right, thank you.
all right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Nice work, John.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Good night.
Punch it down.
Yeah, right.
Gene, any reserve funds? And then our next meeting, everybody, will be 30 minutes before on May the 1st. Wrap up loose ends, and then in June, we'll meet to reorganize.
So what time is that, 6:30?
6:30, yeah, in room
6:30.
C102.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Can I just add, I will not be at town meeting on May 1st, so make sure you have a quorum.
Yeah, everybody. So we have a motion to adjourn by Sandy.
Second.
Mike, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? What's that? We adjourn at 9:35.
That's pretty good.